Women's Month. The whole of March is the Women's Month. I wish you a happy Ramadan Kareem, but also a happy season for Lent. So while it is Women's Month, it's also the month for faith, refocusing and reflections.
Talk about that, refocusing and reflection. George, Madame Lydia Wanyoto has effectively introduced you.
To our listeners, always a pleasure to be here. And Honorable Lydia, and yes, I also join in celebrating women this week.
Okay, so let's stay on, or rather begin with the prong on Women's Month, and we are in a position where I think Madame Lydia Wanyoto can ably begin that particular submission this morning. First and foremost, what is the significance of the month itself? And at the time we are celebrating, marking, and commemorating all these days, what is in it for women today that we can actually put fingers on and say this is concrete in terms of benefits, in terms of developments going forward?
We mark 8th March as International Women's Day. This is a global realization that women can make a very big contribution to socio-economic transformation of the communities, but that they are also a very important segment of society whose potential should be fully exploited but also grown so that they can make a contribution. And for us in Africa and coming down home in Uganda, traditionally women were not seen in that purview. Women were seen through our cultural setting as the home backyard people. You get married, you stay in the backyard, you don't have to go to school, but that has changed over the time. And the 1995 constitution of our country has anchored the growth path of women so that they are able to benefit or get exposed to opportunities that come with their male or their brethren counterparts. So that when a girl is born, she should have the opportunity to go to school, or to be grown, or to be skilled like her brothers, and that when you grow, you're able to be given the opportunities that are competitive just like any other human being. Because of the history of the cultures and the settings that impinge negatively of women, we've been able to fight using legislation. If you look at the Constitution, Article 31, Article 30, and all the Chapter 4, what we call the Bill of Rights. Whenever they talk about rights, you find that there's an extra rider of vulnerable groups, and women are there. So even if you are born without any disability or without any defects, you find that you are vulnerable because you're a woman, because of your biology. And that's what we've been trying to get away with. We sensitize, we legislate, we put into policies, we do affirmative action, special ministry for women, policies for girls, special affirmative action in education system, so that we lift this human being to contribute to their best potential, and thereafter grow the economy or grow the countries. Women play a very important role in our community, and the biggest unit of development of any nation, it starts at the household. So when you see the rallying contribution a woman makes in a home, as a mother, as a wife, as actually a manager of the home, in charge of nutrition, in charge of healthcare, in charge of hygiene, everything, and the husband is ideally supposed to be the provider. But now there has to be those balanced roles, and that these ascribed roles in society should not negatively impinge on the potential of a woman. They should be able to bring her up so that she contributes economically, socially, but also build herself to be standing out there. Especially for us, like in Uganda, going to school was the biggest game changer for women because of the universal primary education. People ask about the quality and about others, but for us, for a young girl who would never have a chance to go to school, so there's a village school in her community, then she wakes up in the morning to go to school, but she's not waking up in the morning to sweep the compound, to fetch firewood. that's already is a game changer. So the biggest equalizer for this International Women's Day and the campaign is going to school, get an education, learn how to read and write, and be able to be exposed, build the confidence. That's the biggest equalizer that you can have for men. Why do we mark International Women's Day and International Women's Month, which is March of every year? Is to bring to stock how far we have come, the business yet to be done, and to also showcase the good practices and achievements so far done. In Uganda, we celebrate participating in the governance of our country, because in the past it was very difficult to get a woman participate in elective politics, in the governance, and even in public service. But now there's the 30% in the constitution that has now raised for us women to participate, even including parliament. There is a seat specifically for a woman. However much Musisi wants, he can never go to parliament using the affirmative action. That has given us numbers. Now the next level is to look at the quality. But that's the numbers, the image of the numbers already assured. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and I'm sure Mr. George Musisi is one that might never require any form of affirmative action for the push. Is I think good enough to go. But George, the whole idea of the Women's Month is something that is, of course, commendable. It is something that is celebrated, and I do agree entirely with Madame Lydia Wanyoto when she espouses the enormous developments and positives that have been registered, especially in ensuring that women are on board economically, in leadership, and that is in politics and any other sphere. But there are changing dynamics that we have to deal with, including the fact that now women are a lot more in spaces that were dominated by the men. For some men, that is a threat, but it shouldn't be. What's your take on all these dynamics and developments?
Thank you, Chris. Of course, like Honorable Lydia says, we are coming from a distance of cultural barriers, religious barriers.
That's right.
Which created some of those differences, and which still exists. Even not just in our African patrilineal society, but even in bigger societies. You know that when Hillary Clinton ran, the all-woman-man issue was a debate.
That's right.
Recently, we saw Vice President Kamala Harris. The whole issue came back. So we realize that even for a democracy which has entertained all this sort of because we use America as the example of liberalism, this thing is still a debate. So for Uganda, of course, when we took the legislation and put on those constitutional safeguards, the constitution will be making 30 years this year. We've made some steps, like Honorable Lydia has rightly said. And I think it's the right time to even assess how far have those legislative safeguards, have they promoted, do they need to be, because for instance, women in Uganda have hit so many ceilings. We had the first female vice president, we have a female speaker, we've had one for over 10 years, a female speaker, we've had deputy speaker,
that is right.
We've had a female deputy chief justice, we've had a female minister of defense. So we've realized that they have hit a number of glass ceilings. And in so many aspects, the whole issue of, is a man threatened, are these treated as men, or should they be, do they deserve it? The debate is kind of dying down, and women are getting to spaces. We have many women, okay, not very many, but a number of women who have won on constituencies which are general, who have not come on now.
That is right.
We have a number of MPs, and actually many of them have been good MPs and in comparison to some of those who have come on affirmative action. That is the debate we can be having. The other debate is, should we be having someone run on an affirmative action ticket for 10, 20 or more years? That is blocking even...
There should be a cap on it.
Possibly there should be a cap. So that's why I said that there may need to be some assessment across the board. But then secondly, beyond politics, I feel that we've not so much looked at a woman outside the political realm or outside this tokenism of politics. For instance, and I'm talking about a woman like Honorable Lydia here, who got very good education, who has means to reach any office or to achieve anything financially. I'm talking about a woman who possibly is depending on land for survival, who's stealing the land. It's about time to deal with issues of access to justice.
That is right.
For so long, we've had the debate of whether government should pass the legal aid bill, which empowers government to offer legal aid, free legal aid. Because when it comes to access to justice, you find that it's the most vulnerable. Many times it's women who suffer a lot. At one point, Chris, we had in this country a debate on the marriage and divorce bill. And in that bill, there was a clause that if people have been living together, cohabiting as husband and wife for a period, I think it was 12 years.
Sure,
yes.
That is
on separation or death, they should be treated as. And that was hit down. It was meant to protect a number of women who are in those kind of relationships and who either at death or when they're separate, sometimes after 20 years of tilling the land, they walk away with nothing. So how do we deal with that woman? How do we deal with, I think Honorable referred to issues of policy, and you know, at some point we had a promise from government about sanitary pads to girls. And I'm not talking about girls in schools where children go, Chris. I'm not talking about outside, way outside Kampala. Sometimes even within 20 kilometers of Kampala, even within Wakiso, you find people who cannot. So how do we deal with those women, those girls? How do we deal with the elderly women? You know, there's some money they give. It's called SAGE. They give the elderly. Now, if a woman is vulnerable, if most elderly people are vulnerable, but it's even more if it's the woman. So how do we deal with such kind of things? And I think we have concentrated so much on this Gayaza product women who can work as CEOs of MTN.
You know, I'm a Gayaza.
Yes, I'm deliberately using it. But how do we deal with
the ones that occupy
and
offices?
I think that is a whole debate outside the Portorium, and that's why I feel that now, so many years after this constitution, we should shine a torch on those women who are not these women who will be hosted on Morning at NTV.
Okay, I'm glad we are hosting one that has the ability to, of course, fight.
Of course, Lydia can meet in a space, which you can't fight for any space with men.
When you look at the national development plan, the one that is being incorporated into the financial year that is starting 2025-2026, the prong for women is one that should be given a little bit more attention. I don't know whether you've taken time to study it and how it's going to incorporate those particular issues, especially within the next few years in light of, is it Vision 2040? The one that we so desperately want to achieve?
Okay, let me just begin by informing our listeners that the National Development Plan 3 is coming to an end. So the next financial year, we are going to start the National Development Plan 4, but it's in line with the Vision 2040. So Vision 2040 was phased out in 5-year tracks to align itself with, of course, the governance calendar planned for Uganda every 5 years, but to see if we can, by incremental, deliver to the plan of the country. So every 5 years we're able to measure where we have come from and where we are heading. And sometimes we look so much for where we are and we're not able to measure from where we are coming from. It's very important to say we may not have made much achievement, the challenges stand, but where are we coming from?
That is right.
That's where the issue is, so that you're able to have a clear picture. This fourth National Development Plan has come at the time of fresh national indicators, since we've just held the National Housing and Population Census. So we have run the plan on very fresh data in how the country landscape looks like in every corner. So we speak to the plan in terms of planning for people, and Uganda's population that is coming to around 45 million people, 52% of it and going to 53% are women. So you cannot talk about a plan of a country of anything without focusing on the majority of the people. And for a women, the biggest anchor is the lowest planning unit of our country now is at the parish level. But majority of the women actually are within that envoys of the village. Majority of them, the Wanyotos are very few that come up to national level. Majority of the woman is on the village. So we're able to be able to unpack settlements. What are we planning for and where are they? We are answering those questions. If you ask for where, the majority of the women will be found either on the village or the parish. Most parishes in Uganda, except those ones which are within the cities, which are very heavily populated, most parishes in Uganda have an average of 12 villages. So that we say when we are planning, you plan with the mind that the nearest administrative unit where a woman can get a service or have a meeting or get support is at the parish offices, which are a walkable distance. Oh, okay. So you plan in terms of saying, will she be able to wake up in the morning, walk, and then come back home? So that's why the parish development model is at the parish. Oh, okay. And that's why for every 100 million, 30 directly is to a woman. And beyond that, then she can also go for the one of the elderly woman has the money for the elderly 10%, the young girls, the young girl adults, they also have the 30% among the youth, because the youth is 30%. So that when we go back to plan now, we are looking at the biggest plan agenda is to make sure that we deal with issues of poverty. So we have a poverty map on the wall, but if you unpack it, majority of those who have not been on the financial grid of the country were women. And yet they have energy, like you said, issues of social justice also come in. You are tilling on the land you do not own. You are going to a market whose produce you will not enjoy the profits. So we are trying to build them to have potential, to have their own collateral in terms of easy access to financial support, inclusion, and then they'll be able to join the market and be able to make profits and be able to also contribute economically to their household, but also to bring up families that are enduring to the socio-economic transformation of our country. So every Ugandan's life and potential begins in the household. But the touch of a woman is what makes a man.
Oh, interesting there.
Yes.
Let's now look at the touch of women in politics in light of the Kawempe North by-election. By the way, the women are lingering large in this election. We have the NRM candidate, she's Farida Nambi. We also have an independent who is NRM leaning and says the moment she gets into parliament, she will work very closely with the government. No doubt, everyone does work very closely with the government, because at the end of the day, as a member of parliament, you're part of government. But is this election issue-based to the extent that we can clearly identify that within Kawempe North, the issues that affect women, for example, are being amplified and talked about, or has the election been reduced to a contestation of positions and simply retaining power, as the National Unity Platform may want, because the former MP was NOP, and NRM wants to regain?
Well, I don't think it's the issues of women are taking center stage, or they're taking any stage in the by-election.
Or rather, is the election issue-based?
I also don't think so. I don't think it's issue-based. Neither is it, your latter point was that, is it a contestation of power? Of course, the by-election is coming close to the heels of a general election. The by-election is coming in an electoral year, because you know the year preceding an election like this one is an electoral year for all intents and purposes. The roadmap is already running, because the elections is the whole process. The register issue is taking place. So it's coming on the heels of that. It's coming on the heels of a largely polarized society, politically polarized society now. I'm sure, Chris, if you came here wearing, hosting the show, not as a guest, but you hosting the show, wearing a bright red tie, you'd receive some comments. Just as you'd receive if you are wearing a bright yellow tie, you'd receive some comments. That is how polarized we are.
Interesting there.
It's also a by-election which has been necessitated after the death of a member of parliament, a sitting member of parliament who many people, whose death, whose incarceration and whose sickness left a bitter taste in many people's mouths. So certainly, the issues you want to talk about will take center stage, backstage, and it's a political contest, yes. And of course, before we even went into the fall campaign mode, remember that some shadowy security forces set the tone on nomination day of, I think, the second candidate, who is the NUP candidate, where he was badly brutalized in front of the camera. And of course that brutalization and has continued on some days during the campaign, which didn't even spare journalists, including Nation Media Group journalists. So all issues seemed to take a backstage, and then it was a political contest, and it seemed that security was there to ensure that one candidate either wins or loses. Every time that is an issue, where that comes to the fore, the use of aggressing, the use of force, it ceases being a campaign based on issues. It starts being an issue of whether there are still people who think that a ballot matters or it doesn't matter. Because it seemed that the security was trying to set that tone, that no matter what you do, you will not win. Of course, which was wrong. And I'm usually a strong critic of the Electoral Commission management regarding its, especially its management of elections. But I want to give them some flowers this time, that they tried, I hope, to the extent possible, we saw some bit of interventions, whether they're successful or not, but at least, you know, sometimes it's about not doing anything, but it's about being seen. Being seen to... So at least I want to give my friends, the good judge and my brother Mchunguzi, some flowers that at least they were seen to be doing something, which is good, because I've always said that the silence of the organizer or the regulator amidst all this chaos only works to promote the impunity. So I don't, at the end of the day, even as the people of Kawempe North go to the polls tomorrow, I think it will be that contest of not voting on the candidate who you think has brought the best manifesto or has articulated the issues of Kawempe, but it's largely a political contest or a protest, like some of us have called it. Okay.
Madam Wanyoto, there was, at the beginning of the week, talk about how Madam Hanifa Karadi had apparently been told, directed, or is it coerced, depending on what vantage point you sit at, to drop out of the race, to allow the party flag bearer Farida Nambi sail through comfortably. Yesterday, the president was in the thick of it all, in the campaigns. I don't know whether ahead of the voting tomorrow, the question of the independent who might divide the vote for the governing party has been settled.
Let me be very, very categorical and looking at the cameras.
Please.
The leader of the women in Uganda for the NRM, and Farida is a lady. We have Farida Nambi is our candidate in Kawempe North. So for me, this campaign is actually personal. I have a direct obligation as a leader of the women, and Farida, we are fronting her to a constituency which is a very good signal that actually women can go grab constituencies. My focus is on that, and for you, maybe for information, I've been in this campaign. I've been on the ground. I've been in the gutters. We've been doing a door-to-door campaign since this declaration. There are many candidates in this race. I've not been following. I have no interest in any other candidate, whether independent. And even, of course, Musisi knows I'm a lawyer. We don't have anything called the leaning. Those are their own political constitutions. You are either NRM or you are not. You cannot. There is nothing like leaning. I am one of the crafters of our NRM constitution. We did not provide for leaning. So that's their politics. That's their business. I would like to inform our listeners from Kawempe North that Farida Nambi is the candidate, and please vote for her tomorrow, Thursday. Go very early and vote. In this campaign, we have been focusing on the voters in Kawempe. It's one of the biggest concentrated population constituency.
Within the
some districts don't have even the numbers Kawempe has. Kawempe has 200,000 registered voters. 200,000 registered voters.
No wonder.
I was able to look at the voters register myself. I've been studying it every day, and I realized that even actually the majority, about 56% of Kawempe North are women. I went to look for where they are. Most of the women are market vendors. They're in the informal sector. They are on the roadside. They do a lot of the night industry on the roadside. Small businesses. They are micro people doing small businesses which capital cannot even go beyond 200,000, 100,000. I mean, if you have just a heap of tomatoes and stuff. So that's where my my constituency has been to try to make sure that, and then issues of settlements, they are so congested, and that brings in a lot of challenges for the KCCA in terms of providing sanitation and basic services like water, public water. Like, because there are areas I went where a jerrycan of water is 1,500. Musisi, can you imagine that? And then they have issues of unemptied pit latrines, sanitation. But look, NRM has not been having leadership in the political leadership in Kawempe North for the last 25 years. The last member of parliament who was NRM compliant was the late Medi Kagwa. So if you put a platform NRM on the picture like this, yeah, NRM compliant. I mean, these ones just come to parliament to abuse us, to belittle us. Okay. They don't even come to ask for anything. They're just in their own world. They are for cameras. Yeah, they don't come to.
Like asking for what?
Services. To say in my constituency, in my people, we need this.
Must somebody
yes, then why are you a member of parliament?
Oh,
why are you a member of parliament?
Then why are you in government?
Gentlemen
no,
and ladies,
we are in government, but why are you a member? Answer that one. Why you represent people?
We shall be.
You must put up demands.
Into that.
We do not see any demands. 25 years.
Oh, okay.
And then you block us from there. This time we've made inroads. Tomorrow we shall win.
Let's go for a break.
Even
Lydia
Wanyoto, they've been blocking.
Has not been leading
let's go for a break. When we return,
representation has been a challenge.
When we return, that conversation will of course continue, and we shall also delve into the aspect of independent members of parliament. Welcome back. I'm glad you're still with us. We are looking at the political landscape ahead of 2026 general election, and also in light of the by-election that is in Kawempe North, where voting is expected tomorrow. The candidates are as many as 10, and here on Morning at NTV we've been looking at the frontliners, that is the National Resistance Movement as well as the National Unity Platform. Is it a contestation of power? Because some elements are concerned that the election, this particular by-election, has not been issue-based. Some of the issues, as Lydia Wanyoto has stated, is down to a member of parliament pushing hard on services to be delivered, and that means there should be cooperation to a certain extent between that member of parliament and the governing party, that is the NRM, which constitutes the government to a larger extent. However, in a country where the realities show a president who has often said that if you do not vote a member of my party, it's going to be difficult for your constituency to get those particular services. It's something that sets the stage for what could happen if the National Unity Platform takes Kawempe North, whether services will come through as the constituents might want. George Musisi, let me try to get this out of the way, the aspect of independent candidates and the leaning nature of their ideology. It is one that poses a threat to the electoral system, because if primaries are held within parties and flag bearers are decided on, and then somebody who thinks they ought to have won that particular primary, it chooses to run as an independent, it poses a bit of a problem when it comes to what ideology are they going to push. Does the system, both electoral and democratic on a holistic nature, provide for a fair playground so that the politics of the day can actually move smoothly with so many independents, for example, happen to go into parliament?
Of course, this whole concept of something leaning, there's your NRM leaning, independence.
You can say no pleading.
There are not many no pleading. You're either no or you're not.
Okay.
But this whole concept of leaning actually was brought by the Lydias in parliament. When they started signing cooperation agreements with people who are supposed to be independent. The whole essence of multipartyism is that if I stand on a party ticket, I espouse its ideologies.
Yeah.
And the people have asked that this is the party that is going to represent them. The moment you start...
they're not only voting the person, but they are voting the party.
In fact, it's even wrong in multipartyism for people to say, what is your manifesto? When I'm running on a party ticket, I'm supposed to stand on the party manifesto. Then out of the party manifesto, I extract the peculiar issues which affect
within
that
the
area.
constituency.
Yes. But now, when it came to Parliament, NRM, with its love for dominance, they started trying to to annex the independents. In fact, at some point, the independents wanted, I think it was under Speaker Kadaga, they even wanted to have a whip. And it was before they said, no, if you're independent from anyone. You're independent from the opposition, from the... You're supposed to be independent, as the word speaks. Independent in mind.
No need to be whipped.
Yes, no need to be whipped by anyone. And of course, that leaning started from there. Ideally, when you are...
is not legal.
Ideally, when you decide to subject yourself to a party process, knowing it fully, there is no reason why you think you should sour grape and say if I don't win, then I should contest as an independent. Of course, parties are under duty as well to ensure that their processes are transparent and fair, and especially for the representative for everyone else. There are different examples, and I will use to NRM still because I'm giving those bad examples. There are times when NRM has held primaries, and a person who has lost has come out to win the general election when they are complaining of fairness. I think the last example was the Kisoro by-election, where you saw the independent candidate. She even attended their final rally where their chairman was supposed to be campaigning for the party candidate. Well, I think even in Barara, Honorable Rita won after losing the NRM primaries, and she won as an independent. But then there are also those who actually are just complaining because of... so every scenario should be looked at its different case, because actually many times those independents who run after subjecting themselves to a party process, many times they lose. Many times. Majority of them lose, like we saw in our processes. And so for me, the whole issue of multipartism, we just need to emphasize the issues of democratic principles to seep through. And of course, democracy, I know, doesn't have a one-size-fits-all measure. In the case of, for me, I've interested myself in all the candidates in Kawempe, all the 10. The complaint I've had from Miss Hanifa was that they didn't follow the party the constitution. That is hers to follow. But for me, the other issue is, what have you done to challenge? What have you done to challenge that process outside? Because the party is a suable entity, you can seek judicial review in courts. Because we need to emphasize party democracy. No, of course, not party dictatorship, but multipartism to grow. The issues of independence should be on the wane. And of course, I agree with the Honorable Lydia that the moment you choose to run as an independent, in many constitutions, even in the new constitution, you cease being a member. You cease being a member, and you are an independent of everyone else.
Has the gentleman who chose to run as an independent after losing the no primary,
I think there are two.
Has the card been retrieved? Has he returned? Have they returned the card for the party card?
Whether they return it or not, that is another thing. But
the system has
practically you've left the party. And I remember even I think it's even the same thing with the FDC constitution, and I think possibly even the NRM. So the moment you choose to run as an independent, you see.
We have the chairperson of the Women's League in NRM. Is it so within the National Resistance Movement that if somebody runs as an independent after falling behind in the primary, they lose the card?
Yeah, without any doubt. You stop being a member of the party legally. Yeah, you start
being a leaning
legally.
Okay,
but you can craft some political leaning stories for survival. But you cease being a member of the party.
Okay.
Because you are against the party methods of work and the party principles.
All right. In light of what George said, there is party dictatorship and party democracy. Did the National Resistance Movement hold primaries for this particular Kawempe North by-election?
Yeah, we did. There were many. There were about 10 candidates. There was a process to choose a candidate. So we went through. You know, for you now, your narrow definition of primaries is that you hold an election and then there's a ballot paper. No.
So how was it conducted this time?
It was by consensus. Okay. It was by consensus because we had 10 candidates, and yesterday they were all introduced, and they said yes, I was a candidate, but then I stood down because we built consensus. Consensus is also, when you come across people who are unopposed, it doesn't just happen. There's always a process of negotiating. You step down, you step down.
Okay. Yeah. That question, I think, is I won't contest it if there is consensus.
Yeah, there was the moment somebody is an opposed or someone comes up, then there has been a process of consensus. You can only go to create ballot papers and for us you even line up when this has now not achieved. But for many times you begin like 10, 15, then you zero down.
You zero down.
Through consensus.
At what point is conducting a primary ditched in favor of consensus?
There is a call of interest, and that happened. You want to contest for Kawempe North elections through NRM, they give a period. There's a call of interest. You come and say, me, Lydia Wanyoto, I want to contest in Kawempe North, me, George Musisi. Then you become, then there's a close-off. Then they call you and say, guys, we just need one person. Is it okay for you people to step down? Others, yes, we step down. I mean, I'm not step down. When you say I'm not stepping down, you run now the popular vote thing among the leaders, among the members of the party. So that happened.
That's an interesting
in NRM, one. That happened. It's on record. That's why we are so confident about campaigning for Farida, because the process was done, due diligence was done, consensus was done. We had a by-election. It's a sensitive constituency. We don't want to play games.
Interesting there. All right. Lady and gentlemen, let me pivot a little and go into the polarization on and offline. Ahead of 2026, there's a lot of sentiment that is flying around, especially online. Some of those sentiments are basically written or propagated by top party officials, both within the governing national resistance movement and within the opposition parties. When you look at Uganda's history and how we have dealt with political contestation, what we are seeing happening between the security forces and the National Unity Platform is more like the early warning signs of what is coming up in the next few months. Violence upon violence, if words of some people on the streets is anything I can use. How is this going to be resolved in order for a de-escalation to happen? Let me ask George on this, because you are from the National Unity Platform. The opposition party has been accused severally of acting and doing things that do provoke the security forces, including, just a few weeks ago, the mimicking of a military parade by the principal. I know parades are held by so many organizations. Nation Media also does parading sometimes. We come together and say this is NTV, this is Daily Monitor, this is... But to mimic military style parade with even revolutionary songs, some of them that were actually sung by the NRA, is widely seen as the flashpoint that triggered the security forces. Why would the party or party leaders deliberately go down that line of provocation?
You know, Chris, I've heard that word from a number of people, and you're the first person I've heard trying to explain, because I've always been asking myself what amounts to provocation.
Yeah.
Now for at least for you, giving it a face that the parade, mimicking, and the revolutionary songs were provoked security. You know, there is an Igbo is a tribe in Nigeria, that if a cat wants to eat its kittens, it accuses them of smelling like rats. So if any person is interested in achieving something, they'll always find an excuse. That's the essence of the meaning. For instance, if I'm to contextualize this, we've had violence, and one of the biggest problems we've had in every election in this country, post-1995, especially maybe 96, not to such a great extent, but from 2001, the issue of armed men, security agencies, the involvement in elections. Actually, in 2001 is when we had the dreaded and now obsolete Kalangal Action Plan. And over 100 people were killed, according to Human Rights Watch report, in that election. We've had the last election, 2021, we saw over 50 people, as per the government Ministry of Internal Affairs report, shot on the streets of Kampala in the course of an election. Just on the heels of an election, after candidates have been nominated. We saw how our candidate had his entire campaign team arrested and detained and dragged to military prisons. So the involvement of security in our elections is the broader issue that we need to talk about. There was no mimicking of a military parade in 2001. There was no mimicking in 2021. But then again, let me also address that issue of mimicking. When you are in a constitutional democracy, like Uganda aspires to be, because we're not there, it seems we are wallowing between being a North Korea type of democracy and a constitutional democracy. We don't know where we want to be. Because on some, everything that is criminal should be defined. Honorable Lydia, as a lawyer, knows that for something to amount to a criminal offense, it should be defined under the law. The behavior should be well defined. You know, on 31st January this year, the Supreme Court struck down some provision of the UPDF Act which said being found with equipment which is a preserve of the armed forces, something like that. And the Supreme Court said that that is vague because what equipment is a monopoly? Do we define it? So for something to be a criminal offense, it should be defined such that I know that this behavior is criminal and I should avoid it.
And
now,
the punishment prescribed.
And the punishment
when
prescribed.
You do this is what you are going to suffer.
Under the law. Yeah. Now, I'm yet to be advised by all those people who are towing that line that when you hold what you call mimicking a parade, this is the crime created. That singing revolutionary songs, you know, in communist China there was a crime for annoying the person of the so we shouldn't be dragged down that line. For me, if what we should be following, and I'm not saying any UP or any person there it should be enjoy some sort of immunity. I'm just saying treat them in accordance with the law. You can't be, you know, I've represented a number of NUP people who have been arrested, both in civil courts and army courts, and the clothes, and they didn't start with the parade. They have ranged from t-shirts to berets. There was a gentleman in Chengera, Mwanga Martin, for having a water bottle similar to the army. So all sorts of things, and that goes back to the Igbo saying I referred you to. Thirdly and lastly, this whole issue of provoking, because like I've said, I've had it a lot, and I wanted to say that when you do this, you provoke security. Is it a walking style? Is it the dress code? You know, they've had a lot of issues with dress code, saying, you know, some people are talking about berets, others red t-shirts, others any red attire, others overalls. And I'm saying that I want to be guided that when you do this, you breach this law. So there was a time, and I see some propagandists bring up some old pictures. There was a time when some new people would wear, that was about 3-4 years ago, would wear their attire and put some things which, some bit of rank.
Insignia.
Yes, and we warned them, and that stopped, saying no, anything which is similar to military ranks, and ranks per se are not, but similar to military ranks, of armed ranks, those ones, that is criminal. So the whole issue is, there is some bit of criminalization of being a noob, that anything you do, even if I was wearing a red t-shirt, it can amount to a provocation of security, but we should be guided by what the law says, such that we know what to avoid.
Madam Wanyoto, do you think the Uganda People's Defense Forces, the Uganda Police Force, and all the other security agencies are overly enthusiastic in this, especially if the words of the spokesperson of the Ministry of Defense and Veteran Affairs, now Major General Felix Klaije, are anything to go by? He says no democracy, and he was able to give us the example of the Democrats in the United States and the Labour Party in the UK. They don't have what appears to be a military wing, and that the National Unity Platform is attempting to showcase what is a military wing, so to speak, and that is why there is justification for such actions.
I think at this level, what some of us see is enforcement. Because when you look at the UPDF Act, even when it is under the process of amendment now, to provide for the current legal regime, the military stores are gazetted, they are known. So if you are going to put on military stores or anything like, you know, the boots, all this stuff, they're already gazetted, they are known. So I think it's now a question of enforcement. And if you're a civilian and you want to cross the line to military methods of work or even access military stores, I think you'll have to deal with it. I mean, how come other people are not so interested in the military stores? Why is it a particular political party or a particular group of people? I was in Ikawempe, and when you are crossing across our friends, these Council Musisi's friends, most of them are putting on military boots. I think they are, I don't even know where they are made from, but I was actually laughing. I said, these guys, they are very provocative, that's what I must say. Because they are, most of them are in military footwear.
Footwear, there is footwear that looks like military footwear. Timberland boots. We have desert boots, the ones that many people are comfortable wearing. So,
you have now interrupted me. So I was asking myself that the military, there's an issue of enforcement, but there's this other issue of source. So where do these people get them from? Maybe through the second hand, or where they are being manufactured, because they are all over. I'm not too young. I'm mature enough to know military stores, but people are putting on military stores for a fact. They are.
That's an interesting.
I know they are. They are wearing military stuff.
An interesting submission from you.
Yeah, they are, because I know them and I know that they are gazetted. It's not just similar. Some of them are actual. Only that you see, like camouflage, they must have some features, but they can be made without those features. And the moment you have camouflage, then you can be able, you have capacity to do a lot of
because you have camouflage.
Yeah.
Interesting.
So I hope that our friends can be up to their defense.
Let me ask you this question.
But for me, I would like to urge, before you ask me another question, I would like to urge Ugandans, leave alone our brothers in NUP, that just do not provoke entities or cross the path of particular mandates, especially security. Just do your bit. I want to say that relatively, for the last 2-3 weeks, the Kawempe by-election was peaceful, in my humble opinion, except for those incidents where people did not follow regulations, or you could find that they were very provocative. Because I've been there. I don't know, I did not meet this Musisi in many of the
I didn't attend
the gutters,
in RM rallies.
But I was in Kawempe. I was there. So you guys, let me tell you.
Before I lose the train of thought of the question that I wanted to ask you,
just keep off military stores.
Within the Wanyoto clan, have you encountered any one teenager or a very lively individual? It could be a niece, could be a daughter, son, putting on a cap that is military camouflage?
No, they are there, but they have to be careful, because if they've been told that we are in a country where you don't want to mix military stores, why do you now want to provoke the military? They've talked, they've mobilized, and you've been just quoting the spokesperson of the APDF. That's already a campaign and awareness campaign. You're a civilian. What business do you have to do with the military camouflage? Tell me what is it? I do not wear a cassock because I don't want to interfere with the dress code of the church. I do not wear these kofias and kanzus and the cloth of the sheikhs because I don't want to interfere with the dress code of the Muslim faith. Why would you want to wear a police uniform?
That's an interesting one there.
I am a member of the Mothers Union. So I wear my white busuti. And it's not gazetted, I think, but we are going to gazette our uniform. But if you are not, why do you want to come and give an impression, that you're a member of the Mothers Union?
Interesting there. I would love
it's an issue of discipline.
But of course,
please submit.
It's disingenuous to imagine that the violence meted out is because of this so-called provocation. For instance, the whole world watched when our candidate was brutalized on day one. Was he wearing anything similar to he was wearing a nice checkered red shirt when he was badly brutalized by shadowy forces? And then the other question I would ask, if these people have committed any offense, is it in order or lawful for these armed forces to brutalize them? Is that how you treat suspects? you arrest them and take them to court. You don't beat them and whip them. Even the beaten journalists are not wearing any so-called camouflage. Is it in order for a person, a law enforcement agency, to come hooded, with hooded faces as if they are broad daylight terrorists?
George, we are out of time. Let's allow Madam Lydia Wanyoto to submit on this very last aspect, and it's related to exactly what you've been saying, the hooded nature of security forces. We've had the State Minister for Internal Affairs, General Musisi. We've had the Minister for Trade, State Minister for Trade,
him came out strong,
also speaking before the floor of Parliament and questioning who are these men. Now, in a country where you have the minister responsible for security, internal affairs, and all other line ministers and government officials questioning where these security hooded men are from, you begin to wonder if the minister is asking us, the population, about these hooded people and how it's unacceptable. Where is our point? Who do we resort to?
I don't want to come here to speak for ministers, but in where I sit, because I'm also a citizen, it's right. For most of these uniformed people, they even have their own names here, so that they are able to be identified.
The judge guys don't have.
I'm just saying, you listen to me. I'm saying for most, the rules of engagement are clear. When you wear a uniform, you must be identified, even by rank, and by name. By name, yeah. And your name is lined even in terms of your registration number, they call it enrollment number. So that your name should appear on your enrollment number, on your chest, but also maybe the rank. So people can know your level of deployment, because deployment are by rank.
So who deploys the ones that don't have those names and ranks?
How can I know? I'm not a member of the security agency. That's how I began by a disclaimer, by telling you that I cannot speak for these people. But what I know professionally is that if you have been deployed,
so you're not dismayed that the ministers responsible for that particular explanation can't also explain it to us?
That's not my business, really. That's their work. For me, if I'm in the public, I want to find a uniformed officer to be able to say the rank. By rank tells you the nature of deployment and the what they call command and control. There are things I will not to talk to a soldier or a uniformed man by virtue of their rank. I would look for maybe somebody higher, because there is that command and control. But most important, they also must have their names on. That's what I know. So everything else is out of my understanding. What I know, if you are deployed, you must have your rank.
So the hooded guys are criminal?
I don't know. But so it's not my business. I don't know.
Thank you very much for your submissions and for making it to monitor.
The best person to answer that question is the minister.
To you too, George Musisi, a lawyer and also member of the National Unity Platform. Your submissions have emboldened our understanding of key issues, especially the political system and the body politic. That's it for the Kickstarter, but Morning at NTV does continue. When we return, we'll